Hi everyone, I'm Professor Crawford and I teach at university. And this channel is for the lessons that I don't have time for in class. Today I am going to show my good friend Marilyn how I make our Crawford family French bread. This has been a famous recipe, well, maybe not famous, but it has been a recipe in my family since before I was born. My mother taught us all how to make it, and now I'm going to teach you. To start, let me just run through the equipment that I use and the ingredients, and then we'll actually make it. We use a Bosch mixer. I found them to be very useful. Others have KitchenAid with a dough hook. I haven't had quite as much success with that. But this thing has a really nice beefy dough hook here, and that's what I've used for decades. As far as ingredients go, we'll use 5 cups of not hot, not cold, but warm water. It'll be between 10 to 12 cups of flour, and this is really just all-purpose flour that you can buy in bulk at Costco, 25-pound bags. We'll use 1 tablespoon of salt. Whoops, that's sugar. 1 tablespoon of sugar. We'll use 2 tablespoons of salt, 2 tablespoons of active dry yeast, and then the cornmeal we'll use to line the pans when we put the French loaves in. Speaking of pans, I do use a special pan, and by special what I mean is discontinued and hard to find. You can see how retro these are. This is the original packaging from I don't know what year these were printed. And then a few of these flour baking cloths. These are just simple white terry cloths, or white cotton cloths. They're about 30 inches square. We'll use those to cover up our bread as it rises. All right. Okay, first thing we're going to do, add the 5 cups of not hot, not cold, not even lukewarm, but nicely warmed water.
Okay, what I'm doing here is just trying to figure out my water temperature. And I realized I've never actually measured my water temperature, so I got out my meat thermometer to find out, and it turns out that what warm is to me is about 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Now we're going to do 5, not cups of flour, but literally just scoops. This is not accurate. 1 scoop, 2 scoops, 3, count with me folks, 4, and 5. Next, we want 2 tablespoons of salt. Again, accuracy measurement not needed. And then 1 of plain white sugar. And then we're going to mix those together just to create basically a loose paste, if you will.
Here's an overhead view to give you an idea what this paste looks like.
Okay, once that loose paste is mixed together, then I add 2 heaping tablespoons of the dry yeast. And usually I add that while it's going. Okay, once I've got the yeast in, then there's really no need to let it sit at all. Some call this a starter. I've never bothered to wait. Instead, what I do now is I start adding flour 1 scoop at a time until I get a pretty stiff dough, not rock hard, but it should pull away from the sides of the bowl, and it shouldn't stick to your fingers. If it's sticking to your fingers, it's too wet. But if it turns into a rock, you've added too much flour, and there's not a lot you can do at that point. So always add less at a time. I have found it's generally about 5 to 6 more scoops of flour. Now you'll see that I'm almost out of my flour bin, which is why I've got backup flour. we go.
Okay, this is a pretty good example of how after 4 additional scoops, the dough is pulled away from the sides, but it's still pretty sticky. Like it's sticking to my fingers like that. And so I know I don't have enough flour, so I'll probably go for 1 more scoop, and that should be enough, maybe a half a scoop more after that additional scoop. Okay, at this point, my dough is about the stiffness I want. I may have made this a tiny bit too stiff, but I think this will still work.
The next step is to let it knead. And so I'm just going to let the machine go for about 4 minutes. And while it is kneading, I'll prepare the bowl with some nonstick spray for it to rise in.
All right, it's about 4 minutes later, and my dough is kneaded, and it's turning out really nicely. If I take a pinch, you can see how it doesn't stick to my fingers at all anymore, and it's going to come off this dough hook really nicely. So let's pull it off and put it in the bowl.
Okay, so I have just a basic 8-quart bowl, and I'm going to spray it and coat it with some nonstick spray. We're out of our nonstick spray, so I'm going to use this avocado oil spray, and it'll work just fine. Okay, so that is nicely coated, and I'm going to take the bowl off. Maybe. And then I'm going to pull out the dough hook and see how easily all this dough comes off. There we go. Out we go. Just peels right out. Push it down one time. Give the dough 1 flick, and then cover it with one of these flour sack cloths, white cotton, 30 by 30 square. Pick them up at any big box retailer. Get them on Amazon. Get a pack of probably 6. And then I'm just going to set this over by the stove to rise for about 2 hours. All right, folks, welcome back. It's been about 2 hours, and my bread has risen quite nicely, as you saw in the time lapse. Before I uncover that, I just want to talk about the pans real quick and show you how I'm going to prep the pans before I shape the loaves into the pans. So I mentioned these before, EKCO, Baker's Secret French Bread Baker's Pans. They're discontinued, no longer manufactured. The only place I can find them is on eBay. So I have a saved search and I buy them. Usually, if I think I can get them for under 20 bucks a pan, I'm like, hey, that's a deal. I've paid as much as 25, including shipping for 1 pan. But, you know, I'm bequeathing these to my children as their dowry when they get married. So I guess I can spring for 25 bucks a pan. They have different, you know, shades. That doesn't make any difference to me. They're silicone coated. They're really easy to use and really easy to clean. The thing I like most about the pans is they have steep sides. A lot of other French bread pans I see out there have really shallow sides, and the bread just doesn't rise quite the same. Okay, so how do I prep the pans before I shape the loaves? First thing I do is take a little nonstick spray. Avocado oil is our spray of the day. And just give each pan a quick coat, usually from a distance. Oop, I'm spraying that on the floor in the front. I have to wipe that up later. Wow, this sprays all over. So a quick spray of each of the, I don't know, what do you call these, shoots of the pan. And this will just help the loaf slide out. I have done this before without spraying, and sometimes they stick, but it's often, I've never had it stick when I've sprayed. Next thing I do is a little cornmeal, yellow cornmeal. Before I just chucked it with my fingers, and you can totally do that. I found I get a little more even spread if I use a, what is this called? Strainer colander, a little tiny one. And just tap, 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 up and down. You don't need a ton, just a nice coating, as if it has just sprinkled a little snow, like it's snowing right outside right now. Okay, next thing, I'll set those pans right to the side. And I'm going to create a working surface with just a little nonstick spray right here on the counter. Just a quick. And my goal here is to, oh, look how nicely that's risen. That's nice. Flip it upside down. Come on out. There we go. And what I want to do here is split this mass into 6 even parts. I'll probably cut it in half and then thirds, and each of those 6 I'm going to roll out real fast and then put into each pan. So I grab just a big old knife and pull it apart, and then roughly eyeball thirds, kind of like 3 pizza slices. And you're not trying to mash this down so much as just separate. And then each one of these I'll take and really quickly shape it into a loaf that is about 3/4 of the length of the pan. If you go the full length of the pan, when it rises, it'll spread over the edges, which I've done many times. And it's not the worst thing in the world. It just will hang awkwardly in the oven and be difficult to pull out when it bakes itself to your oven rack. Okay, so about 3/4 of the length of the pan. This is not difficult at all. You just separate into thirds again. One quick roll out, trying to keep it, I don't know, about 1.5 inches in diameter. I rarely even pay attention to if there's a seam side, but if there is, try and put a seam side down. And just like that, we've got our 6 loaves. And now what you want to do is cut some slits. I'm sure there's an official baking term for that. I'll look it up. And when I figure out what it is, I'll put it as a title. But some slits for the bread to expand as it rises. And to do that, literally just take a pair of kitchen shears and at an angle, cut 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. 1, 2, 3. And now those are starting to look like loaves of bread. Okay, that's all it took. Same cloth that you had covering those pans. Just slide them out here, cover them. Now you let this rise for about 1.5 to 2 hours, and then we'll get to baking. All right, it has been about 1 hour and 45 minutes that the bread's been rising. And now this is always my second favorite part of baking this bread. It's seeing how much it's risen. So here we go. Oh yeah, those look perfect. I've preheated the oven for 375 degrees, and I'm gonna put these loaves in for 25 minutes, and then we're done. Very simple. So let's take them right in. see from the back angle here, I can only fit 2 loaves on the top rack. Keep them spaced apart. And so I'll put the 3rd pan on the 2nd or bottom rack. And close it up. Timer, 25 minutes. And we're gonna have ourselves some delicious bread in just 25 minutes. All right, it has been about 25 minutes. When we hear the beeper go off, we know it is time. All right, we're gonna pull these out. Oh yes. Oh, look at that, beautifully tanned, beautifully browned, so nice. And watch how they just slide right out. Woo, almost too far. Stay on the rack, stay on the rack. Set that on top of the oven because that pan is hot. We'll grab the 2nd one. Slide it right on out to the cooling rack. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And you'll notice that the loaves on the bottom brown just a little bit less because they're not as close to the element on top of the oven. Maybe that's just our oven. Oh, that is beautiful. Now, I mentioned earlier that revealing the loaves from underneath the rising cloth was my 2nd favorite part. My 1st favorite part is cutting into a new loaf. Put it on a diagonal, cut right in, cut maybe a slice or 2 more. Oh, steaming hot. Some people say you should let these rest, but why wait? It's too good to wait. Get a little butter, slap it on there. Oh, it just melts right in there. Look at that. Oh. Get on there. There we go. Get a little of your favorite homemade jam that your wife has made. It's just delicious. Put that on there. Ah, it's a little bit of heaven. All right. We hope you've enjoyed Professor Crawford teaching how to make Crawford family French bread. And just remember, when you cook, wear a super old apron with your name on it that has lots of stains, because then people will think you cook a lot. It's a perfect disguise. One postscript. You may eat through all of this bread in one sitting. It is that good. But just in case you don't, what we found you can do is simply take some plastic food wrap, stretch out a decent length, and then take your loaves and just wrap them up. You don't need to triple or quadruple layer. 1 layer of wrap, totally fine. Wrap it up. And then I'll take these and go stick them in the freezer. And then these will keep for months. And when you're ready to have some bread, just pull them out about an hour before dinner time. Let them thaw on the counter. And then preheat your oven to 375. And then take it out of the wrapper. Do not put the wrapper in the oven. That should be obvious, but just in case. And then I literally take the loaf, stick it right on the oven rack, cook for 5 to 10 minutes. It just crisps it up really nice, and it comes right out of the oven as if it was a fresh loaf again. And so usually we'll do that. These will last us several weeks. I've made 18 loaves at one time, and just stock up the freezer, and then you have bread for as long as you want. All right, enjoy.